Hello there, my name is Victoria Kennefick and I'm absolutely delighted to be joining you for a very different Culture Night 2020 with the Munster Literature Centre. And I'm very grateful to Pat Cotter and to everyone at the Munster Literature Centre for the invitation. I'm going to read from my pamphlet, White Whale, which was published by Southword Editions in 2015, and it won the Munster Literature Fool for Poetry Chapbook Competition and the Saboteur Award for Best Poetry Pamphlet. And it's a very, very special book for me. It was my first big publication, and it really marked the true beginning, I suppose, of my poetry journey. I was so grateful to the Munster Literature Centre and to Southword Editions for the support and encouragement. And it really has brought me so many exciting places, and I've met so many interesting people ever since it was published. It really is an important first step in my journey that has led me now to publish my first full collection with Carcanet Press, Eat or We Both Starve, which is coming out in March 2021. So I owe a lot to this little book. I was very lucky to share the launch and the reading of White Whale with Virginia Astley and her beautiful collection, The Curative Harp, which was also a winner of the Munster Literature Centre Fool for Poetry Chapbook Competition and is available, like all of the brilliant pamphlets they have produced, on the Munster Literature Centre webpage. So I recommend that you check it out. I was rereading it the other night and I came across a poem that really is bursting with hope and optimism. And I thought that was something that we really need more of in these challenging times. So I thought I would share this poem with you. At Last by Virginia Astley. Today with no hesitation, light, primroses, the grass in an afternoon deepening green, lawnmowers, a bee in the willow, a small tortoiseshell basking on the step. It's not yet dark. The sun still to sink beyond the sheep field, but the moon is high. I am cleaning windows with scrunched up newspaper. You have flung the doors wide, claimed your bike from the shed, laid a fire in case it turns cold overnight. Like the birds, you are singing. So that's, I suppose, a very important message for us all to keep singing. The poems that I'm going to read from White Whale are the sea poems. I'm from Shanagarry in East Cork, and it's right on the ocean. And the sea has held such a very, very important place in my heart, particularly, I suppose, because I grew up so close to the sea. And even though I live in County Kerry, which thankfully is still in Munster, I'm really always drawn to the ocean and very, very lucky that I live still within walking distance of the sea. It colours so much of my poetry and obviously affects so much of my life and my family's life and our relationships and how we view ourselves in relation to landscape and all of those elements. So this first poem is the first one in the collection and it's called Beached Whale. At first I thought that enormous lump of red-brown on the sand was the trunk of some ancient washed-up tree. It was only when I mounted the object, digging my little hands into something far too pliable, that it hit me. The stale smell of 1,000 low tides, and the mute open mouths of the many onlookers with their hysterical dogs, the seagulls circling like squalling clouds, my mother's curlew scream as she ran towards me, disjointed. Astride the whale like this, looking at my mother move through dimensions, planes of distance, I thought of boutique dressing rooms brimming with clothes and tension like gas expanding, and two little girls watching their mother cry at her reflection distorted in a fluorescent mirror. The weight of her past made flesh on her hips, the scars of our arrivals barely healed after all this time, my blind hands all over the body. Grasping, desperate to hold on to something real, not knowing what that was. Shanagarry, as you may know, is very close to the beautiful, arguably more beautiful and picturesque village of Ballycotton, which is just perched on beautiful cliffs right next to Ballycotton Island. And we visited Ballycotton very regularly as children, particularly on summer evenings, watching the sunset from the pier and watching the fishermen and little kids and families fishing off the pier. And one day it was our turn. Ballycotton Pier. Bright lemon day. Our eyes water. Dad takes us to the pier. I don't know where he found the rods, and without showing us how, we cast off into silty sea where humpback rocks congregate. I don't want to catch anything. Imagine something slimy will take the bait. A tug. Dad shouts instructions. I reel in the line. The fish's mouth plucked above the surface blows desperate kisses to air. Tangled. The dogfish pants, smacks the swell, swims around itself. Dad says it's a bottom feeder, so we cut and snap. Watch the fish, white-bellied, bitter and hooked, escape back into the depths. At dinner, I squeeze a lemon segment over fish I will not eat. Squint my eyes at splattering juice. The hook in my heart judders, all at sea. I carry it, piercing, into ever deeper water. Those two poems are very much based in childhood, but that whale theme is something that I suppose has carried with me through my life so far. So this is a poem that is set much later, but still, I suppose, concerns the sea and everything related to the sea, especially whales and literature. Moby Dick. I never imagined that in Arrowhead, when I encouraged you to purchase a set of engravings of the whale and Ahab, that they would end up 6 years later in your airy Dublin apartment, the one you share with your Canadian girlfriend. Look, you say when I visit for the first time, we hung the whale above the fireplace. You've left the bedroom door open, and I see the other picture hangs easily over your white bed. Origami sheets fold, twist and peak. My coat lies on your crisp sheets. I watch it from the living room, beached upon that ivory shore, as I sip weak tea. My Uncle Joe, who was a Shanagarry man through and through, died this year just before COVID, and he was a great storyteller and would tell many tall tales. And this is one of the tales he shared with me, and he swore to me it was true, and I have no reason to doubt him. Lighthouse, for my uncle Joe Kennefick. They say that when they laid his bloated body in her open arms, she tried to dry him with her long red hair. Her tears threatened to drown him all over again. They say that when she finally let go, her fingers were puckered. In the morning, her hair was pure white. She never left the corner house again. They say she fell away to nothing. Her bones barely held up pale skin, sail taut against the storm of winds that prevailed night after night. They say she haunted windows, watched the water, her face a perfect sphere. And the crews sailing the rising sea often mistook her for the moon. The next poem I'm going to share with you is the poem that gives the pamphlet its title, White Whale. My dad, Robert, loved to take us on Sunday drives, and we travelled all around East Cork, looking at various houses and monuments and so on. And one of his favourite trips, and it became one of my favourite trips, was to Youghal in East Cork. And he was particularly taken with the fact that Moby Dick was filmed there by John Huston, and it starred Gregory Peck, who was and remains a huge crush of mine, such a handsome man. And so I was very, very interested in all things Hollywood from a very young age and everything to do with film. So I really relished my dad explaining how they filmed the movie there and how the locals reacted and so on. So this is, I suppose, to commemorate those trips. White Whale, from my dad, Robert. I rattled around the back seat. Your long fingers drummed the steering wheel out of time. In Youghal, you navigated me through Moby Dick by my miniature hand. In the pub, Bearing its name, Houston cursed at pints, wood-lined walls and stoop-backed regulars, imagining his just-dead father as Ahab. Peck, newly bearded, kept to himself. The harbour basin was a stand-in for New Bedford. The whale, you said, floated on drums of compressed air, hydraulics, until one choppy day it came loose from its tow line, drifted away in a fog. They made do with a barge concealed by a hump, back, fin, and tail. The captain hunted this for leagues. Your shadow haunts the water. Your finger rises to trace the crudely painted picture on the pub's gable, the creature in air. And grief emerges, breaching the surface. My father is buried in a beautiful graveyard where our family has been buried for generations. The Kenneficks have been in Shanagarry since the 1600s, and myself and my sister are at the end of both lines of my maternal and paternal line. So it was hard to say goodbye to Shanagarry in many respects, but it's somehow strangely comforting to know that they're all still there in some regard. It's a really stunning graveyard right by the wetlands, and this is called Rib. I have visited your grave many times, expecting to find you, tending your plot maybe with a shovel or a strimmer, turning your handsomely lined face towards the sun. In Kilmahan Cemetery, wild garlic excretes a heavy smell. White bonnets bob at your wooden cross, embarrassed to show their faces' roots grown so deep. Reflected in the bronze plaque, my borrowed face, my something blue. Your name, that date engraved above pebbles, surfaced shyly in the wake. I see through soil and rotting wood to what remains of you. With bare hands I'll dig, scavenge your grave goods. Count, collect, wash your bones, knit them together, taste dirt under my fingernails, earth that reeks of ramsons. The hole empty, swallowed, to fill with rainwater and white feathers. Wild garlic lingers, a confusion of scents and scents. You pull your weeds in your element. Heaviness tugs at me. You do too. A corset I wear made of your ribs. My rib that made you. And this last poem that I will read for you, and thank you so much for tuning in, is, I suppose, a sort of love poem to the ocean. It's called On Reflection. The sea, a shell rippling open, puts itself in the shallows, leans over quivering panes, dips tippy-toed to look at itself now it's low tide. It squints up at us, shivering, our breath clouds of brushed cotton. Gooseflesh toes burrow down to where worms squirm. Sand, hands cupped, holds us up, my head in view, flat on the water in the sky, pupil in the eye, turned in on itself and out, and you, and I, and me, and you, and us, pinks, blues, periwinkles, a cockle, kelp. The ocean takes us all, the sky too, on reflection. I wish I could have been there in person to read for you, but I'm delighted that the technology exists, that we can celebrate Culture Night in this way. And I'm really looking forward to watching the other readings as part of the Munster Literature Culture Night celebrations. And again, thank you to everybody there, and thank you all for listening. And I'll see you again. Bye-bye.